Great. All right. Welcome back to part 2 of our class on edges within clouds and finding the gesture and the flow of cloud painting. Be stepping over to the easel here in just a second. I'll be doing a quick acrylic painting, black and white, and then letting that dry so that we can glaze into it. And while it's drying, I will be doing an oil painting. Both of them will be kind of quick, a little on the looser side. And we'll be talking about a couple different aspects of painting. I will also go over the colors that I will be laying out with the oil paints. So let's flip over to there. I'm trying to make sure that I keep the keep it pinned for everybody. Is everybody seeing me? And does it stay on me even if somebody else talks?
Yes.
Great, perfect. All right. Here is the view of the mess on the easel really quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and step this back again, just to very quickly explain again, kind of the studio setup. Right over there is where I was just sitting, where I was talking to you guys in front of those just over here, we've got my great big Hughes easel, which can take focus. I don't know why I didn't want to focus there. Hughes easel, which I've got an easel or a palette, sorry. A glass palette that I put my oil paints on. This is gray gesso over a square panel, wood panel that I'll be painting the acrylics on. Down below that, we've got my great big Husky hardware box, or toolbox, I guess. With all my paints and brushes and everything inside of there. Just hundreds of brushes. I keep everything quickly at hand. And sorry about that. Over here, we have my paint thinner container. And here is actually oil. So if I want to leave my brushes longer sitting, just let them soak in the oil, which is better for them than sitting in the paint thinner. And I will be mixing the acrylic paint on this palette today. Would you guys like to see that and the surface, or should I just zoom in on the surface since it's just mixing black and white paint? What would you guys prefer?
I like to see a close-up of your work.
I think that'll be better too. So I'm just going to move that up there. There. And you can kind of see the reference. I'm afraid it's pretty glary on there, but it's a black and white version. So not a whole lot of information, but that's all I'm going to need. And hopefully after glazing, it'll look closer to this reference. So.
Hey, Michael.
And then with my acrylic paints, I mixed some yellow into the white, and again a little bit of burnt umber into the black, just to kind of warm it up. It could have been some red, it could be whatever I want. I could have just left it black as well. But again, I'm after the values, but the colors that I do choose as this underpainting to glaze on top of does matter, because I'm just going to be putting very, very transparent washes on top, very transparent glazes on top of these colors. So it does matter, but not going to worry about it too much being perfect, just because I want to show you. So I'm going to be looking for the movement, the flow, or the elegant shapes, if they are in there, if that's what this painting is going to be about. So I know this is kind of washed out for you on your screen, but there's some light clouds up here. It's kind of got this shape, and here it's kind of got this shape down here. First thing I do whenever painting a landscape is what, Susan? What's the first thing I do? Give you a hint.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. The first thing you do, you've got the canvas gray. So what's the question?
What's the first mark I'm gonna make
Oh,
on my panel?
Your foreground. No. Uh-oh.
Close.
Horizon.
Horizon line. Luckily, you guys have exactly the same voice, so I can't tell that Susan didn't say it. But horizon line, yeah, just.
No, Michelle,
because you're talking. And I know my horizon is very low, right? When it was a 10-inch, now it's only an 8-inch. It was an 1.5 inches, so it's really only going to be just a little above. I also got to keep in mind, though, that if I do frame this, it will be cutting in a little bit from the
yeah,
edge.
I always have that problem.
So if you put things too close to the edge, especially if it's something that might be borderline important, you will lose it to the frame, and it looks doubly, triply awkward, having like a little figure just poking out from behind the frame, or whatever else, the clouds disappearing behind them. So I've got my horizon line. I'm gonna draw in a little bit of a far mountain back there, just a little bit of an angle. And I think we decided we were going to draw in a couple little direction lines, like as if there's some kind of hinting of some fields or something kind of going off to add a little bit of depth. There we go. Couldn't quite see it. Also, I have some trees. So I'm just going to bring in some nice, dark, simple tree forms here. Take my mister here and make sure my paints are a little bit flowy and not drying out too quick. And I'm just thinking shapes. I'm not going to overly design anything yet. This is just kind of supporting characters for the clouds that are to come. Making sure the bases of them, where the objects hit the ground, is pretty straight, because they're pretty far back there. So I'm not going to see a whole lot of the curve of the plant or anything like that. All right. I'm going to go a little lighter. And now I'm going to start to think, what are some of those kind of elegant shapes that I want to capture in my clouds? What is some of the movement and flow? And I'm not going to copy my reference exactly. I'm using it as kind of a jumping off point. So basically right now, I'm almost just going to give myself some notes. And you can do this however you want. It can be just with a pencil, or it could be just in your head, just kind of keeping an idea. But I'm kind of going to say that there's this kind of nice hinted at motion. I guess it's going to be a little darker so you guys can actually see it. It's kind of hinted at motion that kind of comes in here. And then kind of a converse motion or an inverse motion. I'm going to break this up. It's not going to be so strong like this. Not so obvious, but these, again, these are just kind of notes for myself, so that I know. Can you kind of see that kind of a dancey, flowy movement? It's also, if I were to flip that upside down, and this is just by luck, this isn't something I think about all the time, but what does it appear like, right? It's almost a creek or a road or something. It's like the inverse, taking our eye into the space. So we've got these lines up there that are kind of bringing us into the space. And we're also going to have this nice flowy line, kind of. It's going to be hinted at. It's not, again, it's not going to be so obvious, hopefully, when I get it going a little further along. So a lot of times I like to kind of paint from dark to light, dark shapes to light shapes, big shapes to small shapes, right? I kind of threw in my ground really quickly, but that's not, you know, wasn't too important. I could have just left the horizon line and been off to the races. So I'm just going to kind of decide, where do I want to start? Let's use some of these lines, and I also have to remember that with acrylics, they always seem to get darker when they dry. So I want to usually go about a value or two lighter. I also have to remember that I'm going to be glazing over the top of these with oil paints. And whenever you glaze, and even if it's going to be a bright, a warmer light color, it's still going to get a little bit darker. So again, I'm just going to keep my values a touch lighter than I probably think they need to be. I've done it enough times, still not a pro with this technique, but I've done it enough times to know that a little bit lighter than I think it needs to will help me. And I can always darken it a little bit when I get into the glaze. And I've got these nice cloud shapes and things, right? I mean, there's some beautiful marks and things, but I'm not going to use all these. Like all of a sudden this little area becomes very horizontal again. That's not as interesting, and it kind of defeats some of the nice flowy lines. So I'm just going to kind of give it a little bit of a tilt.
He's just using a shop brush.
Yeah, I use mostly just shop brushes. Keeps it nice and organic.
I got some.
Yep, if you don't mute, I'll hear you. If you don't want me to. You're gonna say bad stuff about me. He makes his horrible paintings with horrible shop brushes, then make sure I'm on mute. But if you're gonna say something like, he makes amazing paintings with horrible shop brushes, then you can leave.
No, I was just going to ask you what kind of brush you had. I thought, oh, it's a shop brush.
Yeah.
Because I thought, well, maybe you use a large filbert or something. No, it's a 1-inch shop brush.
Yeah, a
Okay.
huge amount in my drawer of brushes are just different shop brushes. And I love them. The older they get, the weirder they get. And in fact, I'll be using some that are really beat up and chopped up here in a little bit to kind of dissipate the edges a little bit. Another thing when painting clouds is a mister is a really good tool because it allows that paint to stay wet and you can really soften those edges. You got to probably not do like I just did. I'm starting to get some of the paint running a little bit, so I overdid it. But yeah, in the last number of years, probably maybe just since COVID, I've really started loosening up with my brush strokes and the marks I make, and letting really odd brushes and mark making tools come into play. I think it's pretty funny that, you know, as we're learning to paint, it's all about trying to figure out brush control and getting everything just so you can really control it. And then after you get that, you have to kind of go back and say, now how do I get rid of all that control? Because I want to get back to nice organic shapes or marks. I want a sense of organic chaos. It's such a fine line when you're painting landscapes of controlled chaos versus and again, that just becomes a stylistic thing. It's not for everybody. Some people really want to see, you know, nice clean brush marks and everything else, and I totally respect that. Just kind of, I've really I've begun chasing something that I, you know, have heard called, or I am calling, implied detail. And that's, you know, the idea of detail, especially allowing the viewer to be a part of that kind of making up the detail in it, and letting so again, still just kind of going from darks to lights, thinking nice organic, I'm thinking kind of flowy. It's just so abstract, all of it. You know, I'm never really thinking clouds or anything else. I'm just kind of this value against that value, this shape next to that shape. It's just liberating. It's so much fun painting clouds. And I'm sure you guys kind of notice that, you know, you'll feel like you're messing up because it doesn't look exactly like the reference. But then when you step back, you're like, you know what? It still looks like clouds. And maybe it's even better that it doesn't look exactly like the reference, because it has a different sense of movement or flow to it than it would have had if I would have just stayed with it.
When you're adding the lighter color on the zoom, it looks like it's just white that you're putting in there right now. Is that it? Or does it have?
No, it's really still quite dark. Let's put a dash of light on there just so you can see how light it's going to get. I'm just going to put it right where the sun is going to end up. So you kind of, so I've still got quite a lot of range.
Yeah.
To where, there we go. So that's how light it can get. And then the trees will be my darkest darks. So
Okay.
I'm going to keep them kind of close to each other. And that hopefully will add, again, that optical contrast that hopefully will attract the viewer to looking down into that area.
Yeah, that helps me focus on that movement. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good question. And yeah, it's hard to see on the monitor, especially because it does want to kind of equalize values and stuff. And you can see just kind of, I'll practice almost a couple of times of like, what would be a, you know, what mark, what motion might help play up this idea. I'm getting redundant up here, right? I've got like 3 fingers, bang, bang, bang. So I'm going to want to do something with that. So just letting it get a little dancey. Maybe when you paint this week, maybe you stand up versus sitting down. If you sit down, if you can, stand up, just so you're using your arm, right? Not just painting up here with our fingers. Maybe we're painting with our whole wrist if that's a little tougher. But for me, it's painting with my whole arm, literally from my shoulder. Again, I've got my reference, but as I'm looking and as these clouds are starting to appear, I'm starting to use them as, again, Bob Ross, right? The happy accidents, as these shapes are starting to materialize. I'm like, ooh, I can play that one up a little more. Ooh, I can, all right, I'm gonna move away from that big shot brush because now I want to get some littler shapes. Maybe even a actual nice brush with edges so I can get in and start carving out. Just need to clean it. We'll see. First, I'm going to start with this. This is just, so this shot brush was a 1 inch. Now it's a 1/4 inch size. So, and it's also got the weird chopped up bristles, which I'll see if they're going to play along nicely. I may be wrestling those too much. So we'll see if this brush wants to work and wants to play on this painting for a little bit. So very lightly touching, very lightly holding the brush, just very lightly between the fingertips and just kind of letting it skim along. Notice sometimes I'm holding it like a pencil a little bit, but mostly it's holding it between the thumb and forefinger, more like a wand, and very light, and just letting the brush kind of make some weird marks that it wants to make. Again, that's that implied detail, that kind of forced organicness where you're kind of inviting some happy accidents, inviting some different marks that you might not make if it was just me and a nice crisp edged brush. And I'm already beginning to wind it down a little bit as I'm just going to throw in some lighter clouds that are a little more in front of some of these dark clouds. They're going to pick up some of that bright, vibrant warmth here when we come back in and glaze. It's interesting. I'm going to have faith that when I get in here and color, add the color and stuff, that it's going to make sense. Because right now it's very kind of broken feeling.
Dramatic.
It should be pretty dramatic. Yeah. Is that what you said? Dramatic or thematic?
Dramatic. It's beautiful.
Oh, good. I definitely have this line right up the middle of dark. right from the light. So I'm probably going to want to bring one of these guys over or something over. That's I have to kind of make something up there a little bit to just so it's not, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of bind these a little bit. Let's give it a little mist so that I can come through and soften edges that need them here in just a second. Yeah, if you guys have any questions or comments while I'm not really talking, feel free to ask. I'll try and answer them. All right, let's get some darks down into that ground. So just letting it be messy down here, like there's some kind of shrubbery, some kind of vegetation growing. But mostly I just want to darken this up so that when I get the lights into that sky, they're going to be even all the more special. I want to probably also darken kind of the corners. I want to keep people away from these corners. Also, I can darken some of those lines that I was going to use to kind of guide the viewer back into space. And also lighten a little bit right before the horizon line. And then I'm going to have to come back in really quickly and recarve out some of those trees and whatnot back here because they're kind of lost. So let's give ourselves a little bit of a cleaner edge where the sky kind of begins, maybe not all the way to the brightest bright, but let's give ourselves some structure. Maybe just a little bit of a separation at the base of the hill, just to kind of separate our trees out, like there's a little bit of atmosphere way back here. And let's bring back some of those lines again, crop lines. So I kind of got one back here. And this is just that simple technique of perspective lines like a railroad track or a fence post. Agricultural lines are kind of a great little tool that we can throw in, just hinting at them to give us a sense of depth and perspective without being, too in our face, I hope. Okay. Oh, wait, I want to soften some edges. So let's hope that I didn't let it dry overly too much. I'm going to take a clean brush and I'm just going to come in and, oh, perfect. Yay. So now I can come in and just soften, not all the edges, just some, again, I want the viewer kind of down in this area. So as I go kind of away from that, I can kind of soften. Maybe I want to have a paper towel in my other hand. So as I'm picking up the paint, as I'm kind of softening those edges, I will clean it off the brush. So you see what I'm doing? Just a very light, soft touch. Let's let a little bit of and we'll go over this one more time with the super light. Really make sure, nice little fine lines. Might be a little hard to see on the monitor, I apologize. Cleaning the brush again, because I want to soften a couple more edges. How's that looking? Are you guys able to read that as a kind of black and white on that little screen?
Yeah, looks great.
Cool. It's going to be fun when we color it in about a half hour, I hope. Soften, 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 soften. Cool. All right. I hate to say it, but we're going to go with it. Good enough. Pull that off. Let it dry off behind me here. And normally I would not glaze this quickly because of acrylics need to not only just dry, they need to actually cure. So typically to do an oil painting on top, you would want preferably overnight. So if you want to do some, or if you're outdoors, I think it dries a lot faster. Let me clean up these acrylics. I've still got a lot left, so maybe save them so I can paint a little something after class.
Michael,
Yes.
I have a question about acrylics drying. Where I use acrylics and no oils, how long should I let it dry before I do a glazing over the top with my acrylics?
I don't know for sure. I would think that would be much, much safer to do almost immediately, like as soon as it's dry enough that it's not moving around on you too much.
Oh, sure. Okay.
I would think because they're gonna, if the worst things, they're just gonna kind of bind together, which shouldn't be a big issue. So I'm just kind of taking a palette knife, cleaning up my area a little bit here. Again, I want to make sure I do not mix acrylic brushes, like brushes that have acrylic paint on them, with oils. Just makes a horrible, crazy mess. Really gets difficult to clean them. Do you use water? Do you use paint thinner? One more minute. Acrylics sure are a nice cleanup though. Wiping up some paper towel. Make sure I go set this tub with the brushes in the water aside and pull my tubes of paint. I've had students who have actually accidentally used white acrylic paint with their oils. Very difficult situation. And all I'm doing to preserve them is I just put them in a little plate, put my acrylics in a little plate, put a paper towel across the top of it and wet it down a lot, the paper towel, and that should keep them nice and wet for at least the next hour or two, so that I can, get back in and maybe do another little acrylic painting after class. Everybody doing okay? Nobody needs a break or anything here? All right. Reference number 2, our Italy. This is an old painting that I just put some oil paint on the top. It's kind of light pink, I guess. I don't know. It's not going to play a big part, I don't think, in the painting at all. It's just kind of explaining the surface. I oftentimes paint over old paintings, actually a lot. All right, so let's get some brushes out for oils. I'll just grab a handful and use these. I'm going to draw out my shapes very quickly with some quinacridone red. All right, Susan, what's my first thing I'm going to do on my landscape? All right, that's right. Put in the horizon line. So that would be
Horizon line. I didn't have my sound on.
no worries. Horizon line, yep. So that gives me kind of where I know, now I know that there's these little hills back here. I've got my big hills.
I couldn't remember the name of it.
Horizon line.
I'm making a note card.
This horizon line, we want to make sure that the earth is not tilting.
Yes, thank you for keeping me on track.
Oh, you're all right. I'm just picking on you. I see what lines are not showing up exactly on the monitor here. And I'm just kind of roughing this in. I'm not going to worry too much about anything being perfectly placed here. Put a farmhouse in here somewhere. Maybe, I don't know if I'll ever get to that level of detail in this quick painting, but a couple pine trees there. It's a very rough, very loose. And I oftentimes will just kind of look to the darker areas to give me my structure. I'm thinking big shapes to small shapes, and I'll be able to come in and add detail as needed. All right, so now the important part, right? The clouds. This is what this painting is about the contrast. We talked about the warm and the cool, the light and the dark, and this kind of nice bit of a movement, a bit of a gesture that it has to it, a bit of a
Oh, I see. I think I see. Mhm.
again, just like in the last one, most of those lines will kind of disappear as I'm building the clouds up, but it's kind of like, how do I want the viewer to move through the painting? How do I want, optically to look?
So
Which
Michael, I'm assuming this week you want us to do gestures.
gestures and lost and or hard and soft edges.
Okay,
So the homework is, yeah, gestures and hard and soft edges, lost and found edges, whatever you want to call them. So that our clouds are not just all the same edge quality.
Mm.
All right. So now let's get some dark in there. So dark to light. I'm just kind of using some of that gesture, but not all of it. I don't want to have like a tree trunk growing up here. Some of that dancey movement, that flow. And again, the darks will kind of give me my form and my structure. This is probably a little too dark even already, because I want to retain a lot of darks for down in here to bring that ground plane forward and make it heavier than my clouds. So. And a lot of it right now, I'm just kind of getting some colors down, some values down to see how they work, to see if it should be this dark, to see if that kind of cool gray purpley color is nice, or should I get it a little bluer gray, or what kind of gray is going to play against this, knowing that it's going to kind of go to a bright orangey yellow. And if I want to play up that contrast, blue would be the opposite of orange. So maybe I want to get it a little bluer as I go along, but there's going to be a lot of blue in the sky, a lot of blue gray. Getting a little lighter here. Above the mountains, or kind of where the mountains meet the sky, it almost, the mountains almost disappear. So I'm gonna have almost a lost edge through here, where the ground meets the far, far hills, meets the sky, is really, there's a lot of fog sitting down in there, so it's kind of lost. So still kind of going from dark to light, at least in my sky. I probably should jump down into my land and get some of those values established so that I know, what my value range in the sky is. But I'm just going to go with it for a little bit longer. And know that it's going to have to be darker than whatever this is down in the ground plane. Okay, let's get into the darks in the ground plane. Let's grab just a different brush, save time, and grab some Payne's gray. Get in my darks real quick, a little bit of blue, a little bit of red. And let's get some of those darks in. So I know how dark, so quite dark, if I put that mark up there, it's much darker than anything I have in the sky. And that should, even though it's a kind of a big dark clouds, should help it still feel floaty, buoyant, aloft, whatever word you want to use, compared to the heaviness of these shadows down here. That makes sense, you guys?
Yeah.
You can have super darks in the sky sometimes, but if you do it very often, or it usually doesn't work. It usually feels like the sky just kind of wants to collapse, wants to fall down. And I want these clouds to feel like they're up and dancing and moving, having a good old time, floating above Lucca, Italy. Dancing above all the well-dressed, elegant people drinking their little tiny coffees while standing up against a counter. And I'll lighten up these values as I get a little bit further back. So I'm kind of looking into the shadows. You see, I just put down my brush, test it. Nope, okay, too red for a shadow in the foreground. Let's get some blues and grays in there. And again, I'm not going to worry too much about the structure right now. I'll save some space for it so that I can put it in later with a smaller brush or whatever. Or maybe I'll just give it a couple big brush strokes to hint at it once I get more covered. Values are going to get a little lighter, a little bluer as they keep going back into space. Again, looking into the shadows, looking into the creases where there's less light. And I'm just going to go ahead and cover kind of quickly, because again, this is not about the land at this point, just for the demo, it's not about the land. I'll come back in and refine my ground shapes here, but I just want to get them covered. I know that the detail can come, I can continue to work that up. So it's most important that I get the values and get them covered, get those working. In an ideal world, you know, with a little more time, I would have pre-mixed these colors, right? Like I talked about with the mother colors to get them to all relate. But right now I'm just going to kind of get things down, splash them around. Make sure that would be nice to make sure all these colors were relating and playing and feeding like depth and perspective, but you hear me just making excuses after excuses.
Michael, because you're using a limited palette, doesn't that help everything relate anyway?
It should. Yeah, I sure hope so. Yeah, but yeah. And I was even thinking about just doing one red, one yellow, and one blue, and that would have even helped even all the more. So this is going to be some fog coming in there, but not there. So I need to get in there. Want a little more red. But yeah, with a limited palette, here we can see the color. Sorry that we're off screen there. With a limited palette, it's a lot easier to remix or to mix very close to approximate colors, because you can see how quickly I'm doing all of it. And then this is going to get much greener up here in the foreground. And I got to get that black dot off, but I'll leave it for a little bit more. So we really see that that's the value of the trees and the kind of bases here. And so I got a lot of range. So that's nice. We did do that part right. So I'm going to grab some blue, both my blues, a bit of the black and quite a bit of yellow. Now let's see how green that gets. With the black, it'll be muted. It's still very green. If I put that green in here, it'll way out of place in this kind of cool. So I can go ahead and add a little bit of red actually. We'll neutralize it down. A little blue to cool it and darken it. And a little bit of Payne's gray or whatever, just to kind of also mute it and dark it a little bit too. Let's see if that's enough. Looks like it's still pretty vibrant. Pretty dark, pretty vibrant. I'm going to add a touch of white actually. just to kind of. I just don't want it to be too bright. I want you to know that this is an area that's closer, but I don't want it to be shouting for attention, fighting with the beautiful clouds that I'm hoping are gonna appear soon. Right? What is this painting about? Why did I choose this scene? Constantly asking myself, reminding myself that. Because everything should be kind of in service to that. It's almost too bright. Still. Amazing. It's interesting because there's no yellow anywhere, right? I mean, a little bit in this green here, but that little bit of yellow that I mixed to make this green is so vibrant. Maybe when I get bright and full-fledged yellow up there, this area down here won't be screaming out for attention. So maybe I just need to be a little bit patient because I can always come back down into here and adjust it. But are you guys reading this green is very vibrant right now?
Yes.
Too green.
Crazy green. All right, well, we're gonna get it covered first. How about that? All right. And I'm just gonna go ahead and cover this with more green instead of preserving it for the house, just so I don't have that white spot right there. I can bring the house in over the top of that, no problem later. So I think maybe a little structure down here, as long as it's not too vibrant and doesn't draw too much attention down near the edge of the canvas, could be fun. All right, let's get up into here and get some light blue. I'm just gonna go ahead and grab another brush because why not get all my brushes messy, huh? Maybe I can even grab a big boy here and cover some quick. So I'm gonna look up into here and down into here. So it's definitely yellow, light blue, kind of a greenish, then goes up into the blue. So I'm gonna go from the top down a little bit here. Everybody still doing okay?
Yep.
Great. Thanks for joining me and sticking along if you can.
Michael, do you ever put your sky in first and then your clouds?
Sure, and I'm gonna kind of do that now, actually a little bit. For the warm clouds, I'm gonna put right on top, nice and juicy, right on top. I hope I didn't just curse myself, but I'm gonna try to. So, but yeah, you can definitely, especially if you're kind of want to let it dry. But I don't really, I think of everything as just kind of shapes. So now I'm putting in the big blue shapes as we let's get a little lighter here. And just a touch of paint thinner, just a touch, so it's a little slicker. And that's mostly just for being a little faster right now while I'm painting. Just the paint will be a little slicker. I'll be able to cover a little faster. Let's get rid of that black dot. Paper towel. Paper towels and palette knives are how you erase oil paints, basically. Well, and paint thinner if you ever need it, but if you don't need it, then you don't have to get it all runny. Every time you add paint thinner, the paint has a chance of just kind of running down the scene, dripping. And I'm putting it on kind of thick enough that when I come back in and put my highlights, I will have enough paint on the background that I can come in and use it to kind of sculpt with. We're already getting down to where it's just getting a little warmer, a little bit of kind of a greeny. Actually, before I get to that, I should probably let it get lighter blue. So clean this brush off a little bit. I want to let it get just a little bit lighter blue before I let the yellow and the greens kind of start to introduce themselves. Now I can get to my, I can start to get a little on the green side. While it continues to get lighter. So I'm even letting some of the juiciness of the sky and stuff kind of even give some gesture as well. There's some movement in that, in the colors I'm adding. Now I'm going to start getting it into a little bit pinker. I may need a new brush again, just because I don't want the blue on there. So I'm going to go to the yellow, red, maybe a little more yellow, even getting some of that warmer Indian yellow possibly. All right, I've got the big areas covered besides my bright lights in my sky. And then once I get those in, I'll really be able to start to read how things are playing together and what needs doing. So I think it's time. Sorry, I have to take my reference down. I'm running out of space there. I'm going to bring some nice warm clouds, like the sun is right back in here. So it's kind of lighting up the edges of some clouds. Went through a lot of white. And squeeze out some more white over here where it's kind of clean. And this is really not good quality titanium white. It's very oily. It's the Utrex Studio paints, which are pretty cheap, well, very cheap. And sometimes that's great for the whites because you go through so much, but I'm also going to go through more of it because of the fact that it's pretty cheap and it doesn't have the coverage that it could. So I'm going to go towards the pinky colors and then bring them towards the yellow. So let's get in some of those pinks. A little bit of yellow into it to bring it towards salmon. All right. And I'll still be able to come through and soften edges and combine where necessary. Also going to be able to soften off into the background blues to create really soft edges on the back tops away from the sun. Kind of almost, that's about where the warmth is. I can see if I want to put it some other places, but otherwise I get to come back in and kind of soften some edges already, and then I'll come back in and add my highlights. So let's just clean this brush off, and I shall save this for my warms. Let's get back to the big guy. Get some of that cools on there again. And what I'm going to do is obliterate a lot of these areas where it's soft edges, but it doesn't really go to warm as much. So just to soften, I'm just gonna drag the brush across it, and then I can figure out the shape I want from it. This is very weird right here. So I kind of got to figure out what of these negative shapes do I want to preserve and which ones do I want to get rid of. Let's get rid of this blue. I'm going to go ahead and take my paper towel and wipe it back so it's not contaminating when I bring more warmth into this area. So I'll get back to my warm brush. The light colored brush, where are you? There you go. And let's just make that much bigger. There we go, that feels better. Just nice. Don't know where the clouds start, where the sky starts. In certain areas, just really want them nice and soft. Others where it's just kind of an in-between softness. And we're getting close to having coverage, and then I can bring in the highlights into the clouds. Any questions, thoughts, observations at this point? You guys kind of see how I'm doing, where I'm just kind of picking which edges get lost, picking which edges are more definite. Let's get that fog in there because that part sure looks strange, doesn't it? Let's get some light blue-gray in there. I don't know if it's fog so much as just a low cloud kind of stuck to the edge of this hill here. Probably as I get that little really light area covered, probably can feel your blood pressure going down. It's like, oh, finally.
Michael, if there's a cloud that has the really sharp silver lining,
Mhm.
I'm not wanting you to demonstrate it right now, but maybe at some point you could show like how you get that really sharp edge that's, I guess you would just put it first and then paint on top of it, right?
Either way, actually, you can come back in on top too with just a nice detailed brush. Yeah, you can always, because I'm oftentimes working from big to little, but if I'm doing kind of the subtractive style, then yeah, I might just kind of leave it. But yeah, I'll be able to put some of that in down here. I'll have to zoom in the camera.
Michael, I can't tell with the fog, is that top part, top of the fog, is it a little bit of a tinge of yellow in there?
It's a little bit of the red, but I need to bring back some dark hill color behind it. I think it got too red. Yeah, that might be a little bit too weird here.
So you're saying you bring in the red more into
No,
there?
I'm actually trying to cover the red a little bit. There was a red, well, the drawing, the color I
Oh.
used to draw the clouds is a little strong. So I'm actually trying to dissipate it a little bit. Maybe I can use a little bit of that kind of appearance of fog to kind of separate. Some of these hills a little bit too. All right. I don't love the repetition in form in here. So, it's got dot, dot, dot. So I probably want to come through and that. That looks nicer. All right, let's get back to the highlights. That's the fun part, right? Kind of dark to light, and then we get towards brighter and brighter and brighter, and that's where this gets so fun. It's like the candy, the cherry on top, right? So let's get some of these highlights in these clouds. They're really picking up some of the nice light from the setting sun or the rising sun down behind those mountains. Just very light touching on top, just letting this paint just skim, barely touching the canvas right on top so it doesn't mix with all those dark blues. So it's a very light touch, very loading up the brush with some paint and just barely getting in there. A little warmer. It's interesting that this cloud in my reference is not picking up any of the light. Just a little dark, cool cloud. So maybe I'll give him a little bit of pink and light over there. It's nice. All right, so I need a transition, right? It's just like a boom, bright, and boom, dark. So we're gonna bring in some of the pink and bring it down underneath. So that has kind of a semblance of harmony and connectedness, I hope. That transition right here from dark to light is so strong. Let's soften that, but instead of doing it with the cools, we're going to do it with the warms. There, that feels a lot more naturalistic, I hope. Phew! What do you think? That was a lot. Are you guys okay if I kind of move back to the other one and get some glazing in? Did this make kind of sense how I built that up and
Yes.
softened edges, found edges, played it up? I could definitely, you could get crazy and make really, nice, really strong, bright edges, or, soften those up. Again, I want to kind of preserve my edges. I kind of control the viewer's eyes a little bit, but it's up to you. Maybe that's more your style. Maybe more, maybe more of it is, excuse me, let me start again. Maybe you just paint with more things that have hard edges, versus like I like mostly soft edges, preserving my hard edges. And it can be the inverse. There's, lots of great artists that paint with lots of hard edges. Great. I look forward to coming back in and refining this and telling this story of what's going down here again, but not at the expense of what's going on up here. And then letting it sit for a second so that when I come back and go, and you know what, some of these clouds, whatever, I'll be able to judge things better. So give it a little break, give myself a little break from it, and let's get back to that other one. And I bet you, hopefully it's dry. Oh, it's not even dry, guys. So I don't think we're going to be able to glaze this today. It is completely, the wet white stuff down there is totally wet. Just came right up on my thumb. So I apologize. We're going to do that first thing next week. So if you would like to do a black and white, especially if you want to do it in acrylic, then we can glaze again. We can glaze together next week. And maybe that'll give me a chance to kind of go through and kind of refine some of these shapes. So I apologize. That was a bit of a tease. It is not dry at all. I should have had a fan on it, or unless you guys want to watch me hit it with a hair dryer for a couple minutes. What do you think? Would you like to just wait till next week?
Next week is fine.
Next week is fine, yeah.
Great. Well, that gives us 10 minutes. I'll come back over, sit down here. All right. Hello, everybody. That was fun. We did a lot. We learned a lot. We covered a lot. Gesture, form, and flow, right? Those all kind of go together. It's how do we guide the viewer through the scene? Kind of what are the interesting movement that we like about the painting? Again, not for all of us. Some of us are gonna, lean towards that a little more. I definitely think kind of about the dance, the movement. If you think of figurative movement, and if you guys have been to any figure drawing classes, they often start with gesture drawings, right? Where you're just kind of letting in. So great way to warm up and move and to kind of get into the scene a little bit. And you may just do that on the side on a scratch piece of paper, or, like I just did, right in the air, just kind of like, okay, how's this moving? When I'm out looking at clouds in plain air, I will do a lot of that as well. So remember last week I was telling you, where's the sun in your picture? Is it behind the scene, backlighting things? Is it behind the viewer, front lighting things? Is it side? So we're not going to forget, where's our light? I saw you, Karen. Where's our light? And we are going to be adding to last week's assignment by simply thinking about edge quality now. Hard edge, soft edge, figuring out why, where, and when we are using it for best effects, right? To help, again, controlling the viewer. Both things we're going over are great tools for controlling the viewer and showing them what's important, what's less important, where do you want them to look, where do you not want them to look. Anything else? Any other lessons that really stood out to you? Barbara, what did you think of this week's class?
Well, I'm just fascinated that you can get so much paint on that canvas without making it look like mud.
Yeah, but did you see how
that's one of my big problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you see how I kind of painted up to the edges? And then I'll go through and kind of finesse my edges a lot of times. So a lot of times, if you see early stages, I'll actually have a little area of no paint in between, you know, sky and mountain or sky and cloud or whatever it is. And then I can kind of go and I can either drag my cloud up into my sky and then quickly paint, you know, clean off my paintbrush and do it again. Yeah,
Okay.
but that is a great observation. And I remember early in my oil painting days of just being so amazed at like watching, you know, people that I looked up to, watching them paint, and yeah, how they hardly had mud on their surface except for when they wanted to, intentional mud. So I get it. Yeah, a big thing is, Barbara, is be careful at when you're painting that you're putting the brush stroke down and leaving it if you can. If as soon as you start hitting it and hitting it and hitting it, you're going to start softening and merging and blending. And a lot of the mud we it comes from, you know, let's say we have a green tree and a red sunset, right? And we're going to paint them up to each other, right? But then when I get towards the edge, I'll hit it again and again and again. And you know, if you mix green and red, you're going to get brown. So, you know, most oil paints, when they get overmixed, end up becoming very odd greens or brown, right? And that's what happens. So we want to paint, not blend, unless you want to blend.
So how are you deciding where you put your hard edges? Is it based on the path you want the eye to follow or the form of the cloud?
A bit of both. You know, you want the cloud to look kind of real, but at the same time, like if a really exciting cloud is way up in the corner of my scene and my focal point's, you know, way down here, I might just really soften that cloud or get rid of that cloud or do something, unless I do want, you know, jumping focal points, which we did look at some examples of that. But yeah, I will generally try, and it doesn't work in every scene, right? It's always a balance of working with the scene at hand, with the design, with the picture, as well as a balance of trying to get the effect, the movement, the flow, all of that. So if it doesn't work, that the hardest edges are kind of where you want the focal point, then sometimes it just doesn't work and you have to use other techniques. But hard edge and strong value contrasts definitely draw the eye, as well as strong color contrasts and strong temperature contrasts. So all those things draw the eye. If we remember, whose painting was it that had the beautiful turquoise and orange at the very top of the scene? I can't remember whose painting we were looking at the beginning, and it was beautiful. The colors were unbelievable, right? It's one of my favorite combinations in paint. But having it right up at the edge and far away from the focal point, you have to kind of decide, you know, is it fighting itself too much? Is it helping? And I'm not such a purist that I want one focal point and, you know, nothing else. But I do kind of try to keep in mind who is the prima donna, who is the lead of the show. And hopefully you can have strong supporting cast, or you can have just a background cast, right? So maybe you have the prima donna and then you have her love interest that also is going to get a lot of light and a lot of interest, right? So, you know, think of it like that a little bit, of a hierarchy of character or hierarchy of cast members. Does that make sense? I don't know who asked me that question. Great. Yeah, we got one more minute. Anything else? No?
Michael?
Yeah.
I was invited to this group called Northwest Artist Group, and you probably know Jim Smith. I think you might have maybe been in it a long time ago.
Yeah, in Hillsborough.
Yes, and he wants to keep it going, but I have to tell you, I met for the first time last night, and you have definitely infiltrated my brain, because they have this time of critiquing. And you know, the first thing I see, I mean, I'm not blabbing my mouth because I'm a newcomer, but you know, it's like, okay, where's your light source? You know, I mean,
Yeah, you know what? And feel free to share kind of, as you make a checklist for yourself. I think that that's what those critique groups are for, is yeah, you don't want to overly critique, especially if you're new. You don't want to get in there and step on toes and everything else. So I think you're smart. And I know you're, very socially aware person. You're a very kind person. But you know what? Those groups are for learning. And so it's a matter of, how do I say it eloquently? How do I say it gently? How do I start with a compliment, right? We call it critique Oreos is I think what I've heard. You start with the compliment, and then the stuffing is a little bit of maybe a rude awakening or a critique, a little bit of feedback, and then you compliment again. And that way, and then, you're always ready to duck just in case they do take a swing or anything, throw something at you. But that definitely helps. What is a little bit of sugar helps the medicine go down, right? And there's always something that we can learn from it. It might be kind of rude to say, how you painted those clouds is great for me. I will never do that. I learned a lot by looking at your painting of what not to do. But, that is what we get to do from each other's works, is we get to learn as much from what's working as what's not working. You just usually maybe don't comment on that as much. But what I was going to say is, if, as you're building up your personal little critique group, your self-critiques, where's the light source? Where's the horizon line? Why isn't the horizon line flat? Why are values getting darker as they recede into space versus lighter? Why is there only perspective in part of the painting? All the different things, right? You can share your critique list, and then it's very gentle. Right. And they can take it or leave it when you're handing out a piece of paper saying, what, this is kind of what I made for myself. You guys, maybe feel free to add to it. Maybe that can start a discussion too. That's what we did in, what was it, 2 classes ago in the fall class? Or was it in the winter class, actually? That was the winter class where I showed you guys my self critique and my list, my order of events. And that was just because I was messing up too many paintings too quickly and too often. And I knew better. And I had to step back. Oh, I heard a great quote, and I wrote it down. It's downstairs. But greatness is a consistency of the fundamentals. That's it. Greatness is a consistency in the fundamentals. And that's so true. It is so, so very true. I know that so many of you guys are pretty good painters, and you're coming to, my class or another workshop or whatever else, looking for the secret, right? Here's the secret. It's all about the fundamentals. Sorry. You never get away from them. You never do. It's amazing. Fred, you were in my class back when I taught at Clark College. Did I not say that all the time, that all my mistakes come from the fundamentals. It's not because I didn't use my magic paintbrush or have my magic tube of colors or the perfect medium. It comes from bad design. It comes from bad colors, bad temperature. So greatness is consistency in the fundamentals, which is something I will be working on my whole life. For you sports fans, a great little quick story before I let you go is, what's his name? The guy who played for the Bulls, not Michael Jordan, but Pippen, Scottie Pippen, considered to be one of the greatest, most sound basketball players of all time. Somebody asked him if they could watch him practice. I think they're writing an article about him. And he said, sure, I'll see you at 4:30. And they're like, no, you have a basketball game at 4:30. And he's like, no, 4:30 in the morning. And they went, and he was there, and he was already there by 4:30, and he was just shooting and dribbling. And the guy got so bored watching. He's like, well, when are you going to start doing stuff? He's like, what do you mean? He's like, that's all I do. I just work on the fundamentals over and over. I just work harder at them and more, I work more consistent. So he's doing 2 practices in a game, and he's just practicing his free throw shots. He's practicing his crossover dribble. He's practicing his clean passing. And that's it. That's what it comes down to. The style, the signature, all of that, the things that make your paintings your own, those come through repeated work on the fundamentals. And it's better to have that foundation so that when you begin to find your signature, the marks you make, the colors you lean towards, the shapes that you gravitate towards, you have that fundamental base so that those other things can really sing and be special without the whole distraction of a bad design or a bad whatever underlying things. Whew, I should have thought about that whole comment before. Maybe that was a bit meandering, but anyways, I think you get the point. So keep with me, keep painting with me. I'll keep challenging you, and it'll feel boring sometimes, but literally every year, the first part of my year in the fall, I go by the school calendar because of my daughter. The first part in the fall is design and composition. I focus on colors in the winter and edges and brushwork in the spring, just like I teach my classes. And every year I repeat through the cycle. Go ahead.
I got a question, Michael.
Mhm.
Could you clarify the assignment for next week?
So the assignment is to paint more clouds. And I want hard and soft edges. If the gesture thing makes sense to you, I would love to see maybe what you do is you find your reference, and maybe on a piece of paper on the side, you just do a couple gestural, like, what if this was a dancing figure? What if this is how, there could be a gesture where you literally have the arrows along the side of the line of, this is where I want you to start looking, and this is where I hope you kind of end looking. Whatever you want. Gesture is up to you. That's bonus points. That's for the students that are above and beyond or want to experiment with that. I know it's a little bit confusing. So gesture, that's for you to play with. But I do want hard and soft edges in your cloud painting. You guys can choose any reference. Like I said, I just added 200 more. You can make up, it doesn't need ground at all if you don't want. If you want to throw in something as simple as a horizon line in an ocean or a flat field or whatever you want, it's completely up to you. I just want hard and soft edges. If you want to do a black and white and then do some glazing next week, or maybe you just wait to watch me glaze and say, yeah, I'm glad I didn't do that. That was a big waste of time, whatever. So anyways, I want you to paint clouds, hard and soft edges. If you want to do one in black and white and one in color, or just one in black and white, or just one in color, completely up to you. I just want you guys to play, have fun with edges. You guys rule. You guys rule. This was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing what you share. Get on Facebook, comment on each other's, give feedback. Remember the Oreo. Start with something nice. Maybe give a little bit of feedback, end with something nice if you can. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys in 7 days.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Right.
Take
Thank you,
care.
Michael. See you next week.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Yeah, Lisa, if you can hold on for me, that would be great.
Sure.
Hey, Michael?
Yep.
How do I get my picture? How do I do a picture and attach it into the Facebook? How do I do that?
Okay, let's do a screen share. Do you mind, Lisa?
No,
saying
no
you
worries.
wanna-
Sorry.
Okay, we'll do screen share over to Photoshop. Where's Photoshop? I mean, Facebook. Okay, so are you guys seeing Facebook now?
Yeah, I'm seeing pictures.
Okay, so I'm going to the discussion. And then you see where it says write something.
Uh-huh.
That'll be the top thing for you. Every
Okay.
time you go in, and you don't have to write anything, you can just go and look around. But what you would do is right beneath that, you can say, and then you would go to here is photo video. So it's like a
Oh,
wave
okay.
the hand, photo video.
Okay.
And then you'd come here and you'd want the picture. You can do this from your phone. So if you just take a picture with your phone,
Oh, okay.
you can literally do it from there. And let's just say I want to add this nice little picture of the 10 rules to becoming a better painter. Post. And then it will appear right there on the list.
Okay, so I can go in, so the easiest way then is for me to go in with my iPhone and pick it up then.
I believe so. Yeah, you'll just need to get Facebook onto your iPhone then.
Okay,
Otherwise, you can email it to yourself at your computer, and from your email, save it or however you get images from your phone to your computer.
Okay. All right. All
Great,
right.
but yeah, most people are just simple iPhone photos. Just try to get it as least amount of glare as possible. I know it's really hard, and maybe kind of straightforward if you can. Yep.
All right.
We'll see how you do, and then I can help you next week, or again, feel free to call me during the week.
Okay, I'll try not to have to do that.
Oh, you're great.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate
Great.
it.
And then to leave, I think it's just a bottom button down there that says leave, end down there. Oh, for me it's end, but I think for you it'd be down in the bottom right corner. Is that right? All right, well, you're still here, so we'll let you look around. There you go. Cool. All right, Lisa, you can hear me fine?
Yeah, that was really great. It's so nice to be able to be here live.
Oh, good.
It
Yeah.
takes me like 6 hours to go through the videos because I stop and I do.
Oh my gosh.
This is
Yeah.
great. This forces me to just,
Watch and observe. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
I
and
heard you say a lot of stuff.
no, it's great. And I did not know, because I'm not an acrylics person, I didn't know that they got darker when they dried.
Mm,
So I was looking at I was like, what happened? So yeah, helpful. Good to know.
good, good, good. So are you still planning on going to the coast?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So Saturday is the nicer day out there. So my wife and I were thinking that it would be a nice day to go out, but I'm actually teaching a presentation through Oregon Society of Artists on Saturday, and my mother-in-law wants us to go help with the garden. So Sunday may be a better bet. It will just mean probably not walking on the beach, unfortunately for us. So if Sunday is okay, we would love to maybe come out, maybe take you to a late lunch or something.
Sure. And we can even do coffee too. Like I can be totally flexible.
Sure, yeah, let's just kind of play it by ear.
Yeah.
And the cool thing too is I was able to use my timeshare for my sister and her husband, and they're coming in on Sunday to is it Cannon? No, not Cannon Beach, Seaside. And if I show up and check in with them, even though we won't be staying with them, that saves me $100. So I figure that's a
Nice.
win-win-win. So
Nice.
let's just plan on Sunday. I think they can't check in till around 4. So that's why I was thinking maybe if we came around, a little after the afternoon, that might be great. And I would also like to drop off a couple paintings at Dragonfire. So where are you staying, in Seaside or Cannon Beach?
I'm actually at Tolovana.
In Tolovana. Oh, great. Okay. So just north or south of Cannon Beach a little bit.
Yeah, just south, but I can meet you anywhere. I can meet you in Midtown or downtown. I mean, they've got,
Will you
know.
have a car?
I'll have a car. Yeah,
Oh, okay, great.
but I can walk anywhere too. So
Well, great. Well, let's just, we'll let you know kind of when we're leaving Beaverton, and it's like, I think 70 miles from here out to there. And thank you for an excuse to get out there, and it'll be fun for my wife. I've been out there a couple times because of art shows and things, but my wife hasn't been out there in a long time.
oh,
She's actually really
really?
excited. So she may
Nice.
join us for a little bit, and then she may just go walk off and do her own thing for a little bit, depending on, yeah, but I'm excited to get together. I really appreciate everything, and yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you. I think Sunday is going to be the go. I think it just makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, that'll work fine. I think
That'll be a nice day to go explore and be on the beach and do things too.
yeah, I'm pretty open. I don't have any set plans. It'll be great. I think my son and his fiance are coming in that night, and so I'll see them later on. And yeah, not a big deal. So it'll be good. And when you start your painting and you just have like a little line and you go, yeah, so that's, well, like the gesture, like, yeah, that's good, that's it. And we're all looking at these random marks. That's kind of what I have in terms.
Sure. Yeah, the skeleton of a thing. Yeah, I get
Barely.
it, totally. And I'll have to go through some of it too, because some of like the notes for like this cloud class and stuff, I've gotten from other books I've read and from other, workshops I've taken, and a lot of the stuff. So I've got to figure out, do I just have to restate everything so that it's, I'm obviously not plagiarizing. That's the only thing that kind of scares me. But it's funny because, right, olive oil painting is kind of similar. Like I said, it's all about the fundamentals. So I can either just figure out, as blah, blah, blah said, or I can just try to reword it into my own verbiage. And that's probably the cool thing about you taking it from what I'm saying more than the notes I'm handing out, is because then it's obviously going through that filtration already.
Right. And I'm trying to be aware of that as well. So the book by Molly Bang, How Pictures Work.
Oh yeah, isn't that great?
Yeah. So, but I've been reading that. And so I recognized what you were saying about the horizontal and being at rest. So I was like, okay, so that's from that. So I'm going to maybe soft pedal that or just present it
Or just as Molly
a
Banks
different way.
talks about in
Yeah.
the book. Yeah.
Yeah. So I get,
yeah. And she's used everywhere, like every design school, she's recommended reading or whatever. So it's not like, you can even escape her. And this
Right.
amazingly simplistic, beautiful little book she made is just so neat. And then, there's other authors as well. There's like 3 authors that come to mind that everybody's read. It's literally To Be a Landscape, painter, you should have read this, and everybody pays homage to them in their lessons, and I think that's totally great. And just kind of as I like to think about the whole knowledge base of it all, is that I may come up with a little tiny fraction of this on my own by just experimentation and play, but most of it's passed down knowledge. When I talk about standing in the stream of art, of all the artists that came before me, kind of coming down and washing over me and flowing around me. And then hopefully I add a little bit to that stream of knowledge, and the people that are downstream of me,
right.
some of that as well. That, when anybody says I'm completely self-taught, no, you're not. There's no, that's not possible. You're
No.
not completely self-taught. I mean, have you not seen other paintings?
Right.
So, but I understand it sounds cool, and I do get what they mean. That means they probably didn't go to a formal schooling. But anyways, I really look forward to, let me make sure I've got the phone number that I should have for you. And this is, I can stop the recording now, so make sure don't get our phone.
Oh, right.
I forgot to do that. Are you sure you want to stop recording? Yes. All right. Anybody that somehow stayed watching all this, appreciate it. Sorry for all this. Take care, and we'll see you soon.